Welcome here as we together look at the readings set for Christmas. I want to at the same time offer my prayers for you and my thanks for the faith we share together. I'm going to look at both the Gospels set for Christmas. So that's Luke's account of the shepherds receiving the news from the angel and going to Bethlehem, and the prologue from St. John's Gospel, which talks about the Word made flesh, a much more theological discussion of what Christ means. I thought it would be nice to look at them both together because that's an opportunity that doesn't come very often. If we look at Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 20, we hear the famous words, "In those days a decree went out that all the world should be registered." And moving through there, we come to the glory of the Lord shining all around the shepherds outside Bethlehem on the hills where David himself would have taken his sheep, or his father's sheep, and they hear a message from the angel to go quickly to Bethlehem and find a child described as lying in a manger. And then a multitude of angels singing God's glory, peace on earth, among those whom God favours. They set off, we're told, in haste to find that place. And when they get there, they find it as described and then tell people there about what had happened to them and what had brought them. An amazing account, if you can imagine being there on the night to hear that. And probably in all situations like that, there's somebody with a bit of skepticism, somebody who's trying to puzzle it out intellectually. And then we hear that Mary actually hears the words, treasures them and ponders them in her heart, which is very different from turning them over in your mind. She's hearing them very deeply. We'll come back to that account, but as we turn to look at John's Gospel and the Word made flesh, first, if we consider that there are two basic approaches to God. Sometimes the more atheistic approach is actually held quite firmly in the hands of people of faith, different faiths, and that includes the Christian faith. So people have a very light touch really on God, perhaps a firmer touch on religion. When the human mind comes to questions of meaning and purpose in their own lives and in the cycle of life that we see all around us, the beauty, the tragedy, and even beyond that, the cosmic movement of planets and stars, all of that enormity, humans do, most anyway, do from time to time consider purpose and meaning. To many, this question is so frightening that they refuse to consider it and stick themselves very much, locate themselves in the social world in which they exist, and that is it, and they're resolute in that. More common, though, are the two slightly stronger positions. The first would be that there is no God, And purpose and meaning in life only come from our thoughts, our decisions, and our actions. You can see that obviously in thinking, but you can see it also lived out in social attitudes and in events. And in the West, when we have added to that secular mix the ideas of postmodernity, where there is an embrace of no meaning, no purpose. So absolutely nihilistic philosophy where truth is completely relativized, it's completely personalized, it's in each head, it is as valid as the other. This brings, of course, actually a loss of identity, because a lot of human identity is culturally based, family based, society based, and a lot of human identity, of course, is faith based, but we'll come to that in a minute. The result of this, though, this sort of mindset, is not huge freedom, but a loss of freedom. And over the last modern period of history, we've seen many great isms rise up, which actually do, if not actively embrace, materialize this philosophy. So all these great isms have shown themselves to have problems. The most recent one is globalism, and we can see its catastrophic effects all around the world. There's something about the way all of this works that's rudderless, and it is amoral, so it's capable of self-serving and harming people and hurting people in a way that a person of faith would find unacceptable, or certainly a Christian would. And there's another view, I'm being hugely broad brush here, but people who feel that there is a God, or they realize that there's a God, or they understand everything in terms of something greater, something beyond, something that lies behind the material that they can see moving about as the purpose and the meaning. And that allows our lives, if we see God beyond human madness and God with meaning and purpose working in creation, then the lives lived in the presence of God, literally aware of the presence of God, are lived very differently. They're full of purpose and full of meaning. For those with hearts broken, this sense of God is perhaps easier to grasp because there's something there behind the pain. Also for simple hearts, people who don't question in the highly intellectual way, but just live life observing. And people with open hearts, those gentle people who sort of have that open lotus about them, that just are open to what's going on. Other people themselves, which is very important, and therefore the reality of God is so easy to accept. Compassionate hearts, quiet hearts, and expansive hearts can all sense the presence of God. And like Mary, they can ponder the words, the accounts of people who bring messages from God in an open way, because they're already aware of God's presence and the truth of God. I also believe it's possible for people to come to a full understanding of something like the Nativity through intellectual rigor, if they will apply themselves beyond their own limits, if they're capable of moving beyond what they're sort of expecting the answer to be. And that is actually quite a rare thing. There are people like that, but there aren't huge numbers. They tend to stick inside the tramlines of their discipline or their scholarly milieu. So the prologue to John's Gospel is in a way addressing these issues head on. That the Word was with God before the beginning of all that humans understand about the material world, and even prior to any human existence, which is hard for humans to really accept. And this Word that was with God was actually God. This is leaning into the account in the beginning of Genesis, where the Word, or the Ruach of God, moves across the face of the deep, and that is wisdom, Sophia in Greek, Ruach in Hebrew, and is used here as logos, word. And John is explaining that prior to anything we even can imagine, this Christ was there, and that everything that we think is stable, normal, and the way things are actually came into being through the action of this Word, and that there isn't anything that lies outside the creation by the Word. So that is the strong position of somebody who understands the divine. He goes on to say that the light of this still shines in the darkness, and the darkness can't win. But this darkness is the confusion of human understanding and the mind. So I would connect that with the godless world without purpose, without meaning other than what you can get and how much you can get of it. And into this darkness, John comes, John the Baptist, to testify to the fact that this light is there. And then this light that was already present comes into being through that same Word, that same light, but is unrecognized by the world. It actually was his, it was part of him, but it was not accepted by the people who, through his agency, were living these lives. But to those who received him and who believed in his name, this is not so much putting value on the word Jesus, which has not yet been mentioned. It's value on the name in the same sense that is used often in the Bible, the extreme sensitivity that Orthodox Jews have, for example, about using the word God itself. So this is about name as identity, as if you can label something. So you can apportion names to all sorts of things, anything really. But apportioning a name to God makes God into an object, and that is dangerous for our understanding. So this belief in his name is a really very significant statement. And those people who are able to receive him, to believe in his name, his transcendent identity, have been given the power to actually become God's children, to understand themselves in that way. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. So, returning to the Luke we were looking at, we can see the shepherds are able to receive him and believe in his name. And it appears that they understood something of his glory, the glory of God's child, full of grace and truth. These men spent their life working with animals very closely, with sheep, and often out on the hills for weeks and weeks with the sheep, particularly finding them good grass to keep them well fed. Their life, therefore, was necessarily very simple and extremely grounded. They were able to see the glory of the Lord shining all around them. They were able to be staggered by the appearance of an angel and to respond as the angel has asked them to, guided them to, and to not just go, but go as fast as they can down to see this child. There are many sort of alternative responses you can imagine, like, I'll go tomorrow, or I'll wait till we see if this child turns out to be impressive or not, or I've got to wait here and do whatever, or I'm feeling tired. That isn't the response there. The response is exactly as we hear in John's Gospel. These are people who believe in God, who believe in the name, who receive the gift of this child and find that actualized in their personal experience, in their life and in their heart. Mary, we know, had already had a similar encounter months earlier and acted on it with a similar wholehearted response. And when she hears the shepherd's account, she doesn't offer to the people around, gosh, that's amazing, I once saw an angel too. She quietly ponders this in her heart. And I think we can see in that little picture of Mary an understanding of the woman that she was. As to the shepherds, as to all the people who walk in darkness, so to us. The Son has been given, the Son has been revealed to us. And we see God's heart for the world in this child as we look. I think it's important not to see the Nativity as the birth of a royal prince, in that it's an amazing thing, it's great, everybody celebrates, and knows that one day this child will have more significance and power when they work out how to use that and who they are and so on. But in this case, I think we really, at least at Nativity, don't want to do that, but actually to look at the child, at the newborn child, who has no words and is utterly dependent on other people for protection, food, water, health. And this is, I think, where we want to keep our gaze over this great feast of the Nativity. Not on what he will be, but what he is, there in the manger. So that we can see right there the glory, the grace and the truth in this newborn infant. In the darkness of downgraded sort of intellectualism, postmodern philosophies, moral and truth relativism, political obliquity. In that great darkness, a light does shine. The darkness doesn't understand it and frankly isn't interested. But to those who are, we can see the light in this tiny child all those years ago in Bethlehem. Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have times of peace and rest, perhaps snoozes. I hope you're warm. I hope you have people you love around you. And I hope that the glory of God shines around you really brightly. And this light in the darkness of so much that goes on in this world illumines you from the inside out.